Go ahead.
I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the
to the
flag
flag
of the
United States of America,
and to the
republic
and
for which it
stands one
stands,
nation,
under God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
thank you, everyone. This afternoon, we have a special meeting. I believe all board members had the opportunity to read our superintendent's email yesterday. I know there was some attachments to it. If you're able to read the one, I know it was 70-something pages, the one from the New York State High School Athletic, Public School Athletic Association, gave you some good insight into each of the fall and winter sports that is taking hold now, what we're going to consider with a resolution later on in the meeting. It listed all the sports. It kind of gave you an indication if it was a low, medium, or high risk sport. Kind of gave you general considerations to look at, considerations for officials, considerations for coaches, also for students and for the parents. So I think it was very informative for us and for everyone involved. So with that, I'm going to open it up to public comment. I believe, Lisa, you said there is no public comment at this point.
That is correct, Mr. Barone. I did not receive any email requests for a public comment.
All right, so under Board of Education, I'll read a recommendation, and obviously we're going to have some discussion. So the recommendation is be resolved, the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, formally approves participation in the following high-risk sports for the 2020-2021 school year, contingent upon the district's ability to comply with all stipulations set out by the Ulster County Department of Health. And the sports are boys and girls varsity basketball, boys and girls JV basketball, competitive cheer, varsity JV and modified football, varsity JV and modified volleyball, and boys varsity lacrosse. I have a motion, please. Motion by Mike, second. Second by Sue. Discussion.
Yeah, so Mr. Brown Board, so there is just a slight modification in those. For football, it's actually, there's no JV, it's modified A, just so we can get the terms all correct. That was my mistake. And then there is also a modified boys lacrosse. So it's just, not really a big difference, just we want to make sure we have all the names correct. So I know this has been a lot of talk. Basically, it came out very late from the county. Really the what has happened, that the governor kind of made the decision and passed it off to each section and each county to make a decision. So in order for any section to do this, you have to get every health department commissioner who is within your section to okay it. So all the health commissioners okayed the high-risk sports, though they did. Ulster, different than other counties, also sent a list of a lot of things that have to be followed. Now, there's 2 items. So we have met all the requirements except 2, and they probably will take some time to get done. That's why we have the wording in there, contingent. So even if you approve all or some of these sports to begin, the likelihood of them beginning Monday is slim to none, because there's still 1 or 2 pretty big items that have to be met. They are that our medical director has to approve our preparedness plan. So I'm waiting for that back. And the plan was sent and they have it. But again, I don't know how fast they're going to take looking at it. But it is the guidelines that the state sent. We are ready to follow all those guidelines. The other one is a little bit more difficult. So the last requirement was that each school district agrees to indemnify and hold harmless the county, its directors, officers, employees, and agents from and against any and all claims, actions, or liabilities of any nature that may be asserted against them by third parties in connection with participation in high-risk school sports. So no school district is going to agree to that. We've already discussed it as schools. Dr. Corey is organizing a letter, a single letter that all superintendents will sign, asking for the Department of Health to take that part out, because that one part will prevent all these sports from happening. I also have another an emergency section 9 executive committee meeting on Tuesday at 11 a.m. I don't know what the topic is going to be, but I thought it was important for us to at least come to have discussion and come to decision so that when we get these things done, that we can start.
Right. So when you say get these things done, you mean like the individual plan required for each sport and that kind of thing?
Well, the plan, those plans are all done. No,
Okay.
but I'm sorry, what I meant was we just got it. We need to hear back from the health director to approve those plans. And then we need the county to change that wording or rescind the last wording about holding harmless.
Right. So assuming those are in place, the question is, where does the board sit as far as a decision?
Correct.
Okay.
High-risk sports that are
For
identified.
high risk, the low risk sports are going to happen. So,
Right.
right now, so for the winter season, we are doing indoor track and we are doing bowling.
So high risk because there's high risk of contact. These are sports that have contact, but we know we're dealing with a segment of the population that's very resilient to COVID. So I'm excited to be able to offer these opportunities for kids, and I think that the kids are looking forward to it. So I'm looking to support.
Did the Department of Health ask for that with the low risk? Did they ask for us to hold them, not to indemnify them or hold them harmless?
No,
So this is unique to the high risk.
just in participation in high risk school sports. Yep.
To me, that's something of an alert. I'm all for getting the sports back, but when the Department of Health itself doesn't want to be held legally responsible, that seems to be a red flag.
Well, nobody wants to be responsible. That's why it's up to the local boards of education to approve for their particular municipality.
So again, keep in mind, so we're doing those two sports. And then when March 1st comes, we're still doing the lower risk sports. So maybe Frank Alfonso, our athletic director, could you just review those sports that are going to begin March 1st?
Yeah, the soccer at the modified JV and varsity level for boys and girls. We'd be doing cross country for modified and varsity. Tennis we'd be offering. And then, obviously football is a high risk sport and so is volleyball.
So we wouldn't do those.
So we wouldn't do those unless, it changes. But soccer has been already played in the state, in New York State, it's been played in Dutchess County in Section 1. So they were low risk or moderate risk, and I'm assuming that all those things would happen.
And then in the spring season, which begins April 19th, what sports will happen except for boys lacrosse, because that's a high risk? What other sports?
Off the top of my head, you'd have tennis for the boys and girls golf. You would have baseball at all levels. You would have lacrosse. Oh, no, I'm sorry, you wouldn't have lacrosse.
Softball.
Track and field.
Softball.
And softball. Baseball, softball, track and field, tennis, golf, and so those are all scheduled and ready to go from Section 9 and MHAL.
If we potentially approve football, today, high-risk sport.
Mhm.
Why wouldn't that go forward for a high-risk sport like lacrosse? If we set the standard now and if we qualify that, if we set that now, why would that not qualify lacrosse in the spring? That's,
No. I said if today, so if today we approve all of these, then when the time comes for that season, they would happen. If we, assuming we can, the county can withdraw their, safe, harmless, and as soon as our medical director approves our plans.
okay. I'm still stuck on the mask policy for section 9. Thank you again for sending that out.
Yes.
But there's some wording in here. I'm gonna just call the big acronym we got there for New York State. I'm just gonna call them NISFA. NISFA in several spots on their documentation in that 71-page small book, I'm gonna say, that they put together. In just about every sport, there's a very specific grouping of words that said, if at any point during a athletic contest on a field, on a court, wherever it may be, a coach has the right to remove their mask if it's interfering with, or their demonstration they're giving within a practice, and basically leave the mask off. The same thing is said about the students that are participating in those sports. If they feel uncomfortable and it's inhibiting their breathing or how they feel at that moment, at that time in play, they can remove their mask and continue playing. And it does not say immediately put that mask back on after that. It basically says, I guess maybe at the end of the contest, it happens. That's NISFA putting that out there. Now, Section 9 claims to have their own version of mask policies, which each school basically sets up those policies. And I'm sure it's widely varied. So a host school that Highland might go to, if they have a policy that you don't have to wear that mask during a game, then obviously Highland by default, being that that's the host school, doesn't have to wear their mask, and then it's an even contest. That's what I'm assuming there. But when you get to a neutral venue, it says whoever has the more restrictive rules. And that would be the neutral venues rules and the rules, I'm believing, of both teams that are in that contest. So, what takes precedent in that scenario? And I don't like, it's too open-ended with the not wearing of a mask during a contest, especially by NISFA's rule. Now, Tom, very pointedly, what is Highland's rule going to be at Highland for these sports? Are they going to have, is it everybody wears a mask at our facility? If somebody is experiencing some sort of discomfort or feel it's impacting their level of play, does that mean we defer to that student and allow them? Which then that's just a downhill move from there. Everybody's going to claim that issue. What I do think we do as Highland?
I think Frank Alfonso could probably speak to
Yes.
protocol
Frank, what are we going to do?
that's in place for Highland, both for practices, for transportation, and also for the arrival at the competitive site. So Frank, I believe with.
That's why he's here.
I can answer it.
Sure, go ahead.
So yes, you are right with the state's mask policy. And then Section 9 came up with a contest guideline, which I think you were referring to. Any Section 9 contest played at a member school facility will allow the district's mask policy. Our mask policy is a mask must be on, okay?
We're not making an allowance during a game if a student is feeling discomfort or it's impacting his or her play.
In Section 9, and I should say, I can speak for the MHAL. every MHAL athletic director at our last meeting, nobody said that they are planning on playing without a mask on. Everybody would have to have their mask on. So if we were to go to a visiting school district within MHAL, the policy would be the same. And that was one of the things we talked about, where we would have that all compiled together once we would start competing
But
again.
that's an assumption though, Frank. It's almost like a don't ask, don't tell.
Okay, well, I could speak for Highland then. For Highland, any practice, they have to have their mask on. If we have, right now, when we do off-season workouts, the mask is on. If a player needs a break, they go away from that by themselves, get their drink of water, and they can take the mask off. When they're ready to come back, they can.
That's fair.
Same thing on a bus, same thing in the school building. Everybody has to have the mask on.
Okay.
And the same is true with masks in the classroom. So we do have, in school,
Yes,
we do occasionally have students who need a mask.
exactly. And I understand that. I understand that.
Yeah.
But as long as it's being watched and it's not being abused, and again, all year long, our hybrid model has been predicated on cohort groups. So now when we've started introducing sports, and potentially in this scenario, you're combining cohorts. So you're mixing the students together within a school setting on a sports field. So that shoots the whole cohort thing right down. It blows it out of water at that point.
So the plan is what we're doing now and what we would continue to do. Let's say for the high school ends at 2:17. No practice begins before 3:30. So the building is clear. All student athletes are asked to leave. And then when they come back, when they enter the building, or it happen to be like the turf field for a football workout, they get their temperature checked. It is documented, it's put down on a sheet, attendance is taken. And at that point, we're not going by what their temperature was or their check in the morning. They have to recheck when they come. And if they're not in school, they're getting rechecked. If they're an off day of being in person, when they come to practice, they're also getting checked by the coaching staff.
Okay, that's good. And I'm going to make reference to one other thing here where it might come around and bite us now that we start opening up the cohort groups to being together in a school situation where, I mean, now if we okay this and this happens, what's to say we don't, kids that want to be in the school play or certain other after school clubs and activities want to now start getting together, kids from different cohorts. I think if we don't treat it the same way and have the same set of rules, we're opening ourselves up for a lot of phone calls, a lot of complaints. And to me, that would be justified. I mean, if we're gonna have a sporting contest with no spectators or minimal spectators, depending, right now, Highland, it would probably be no spectators, correct?
The whole section is no spectators.
Okay, so okay, good.
Home or away.
So again.
But hopefully we're going to stream through the Pixelo service.
Yes, we are.
Right, well, that's okay, that's great. So now that means the school plays, however many number of plays we have, when they happen, those kids that are in the school play would then say, well, we can have a play with nobody in the audience. We want to have our play. So, I mean, we're going to end up with a lot of unanswered questions by making this decision. And are we ready for that? And
this is coming right from, correct me if I'm wrong, this related to scholastic sports is coming right from the governor's office. My response to a parent like that or a kid like that is we didn't get the same response for clubs or these other things from the governor's office.
But again, like, this is labeled high risk. And I want, if we do go along with this, I want that to be reiterated to the students and to the parents that this is high risk, so much so that the Department of Health in this county wants us to sign a waiver saying we won't hold them liable, something they haven't asked on any other occasion. And to me, I think that everybody needs to be aware of that, because to me, that's a significant warning sign.
Listen, just because you provide the opportunity, it's still a very private decision if a parent and a child want to participate.
And I think that was even noted in some of that 71-page document, just stating that that is one of the big differences between something such as a gym class versus a sport such as this.
I think Mr. Miller's concerned about again, if the parents and the students do elect to participate in the high-risk sports, we do have the mixture of cohorts and those students going back into the school population. So there is, an overflow that we have to be aware of. And I would like personally, if we go ahead with it, I'd like to see some form of regular testing to take place if it was enabled, so that we can make sure that this doesn't, I know there are tracking methods being put in place. I think that's part of what Frank has the students sign off on that, so that they have to give contact information. So if something is detected, we can follow tracing. But I'm curious as to what kind of testing. We already know that temperature taking is only for those people who are symptomatic. Asymptomatic carriers don't have any temperature issues, and that's where a large portion of it is transmitted. And now we're hearing from the CDC that by spring, the African variant is going to be the predominant variant. The South African variant will be the predominant virus, and that's even higher, has a higher level of contagion. So I'd like to know how we're going to be monitoring that.
We also would be very naive to think that these kids, obviously, as much as we separate them during the course of the school year into their cohorts and can physically limit that within a school environment, we would definitely be very naive to not think that these kids.
They're doing it now.
Yes, exactly.
There's groups of kids talking in study hall.
That's what I'm saying. They're getting together regardless, but we're giving them now a school sanctioned situation where it breaks up the cohorts, and it does give them that exposure. And
Well, that's why each sport requires an individual plan. I think that the plan will answer Ed's questions. I think it'll answer some questions and some of your questions as well, because those precautions have to be in place, knowing that there's no 100%, guys. There's no plan that Mr. Bongiovi is going to put in front of you that says this is 100% solid, nobody's going to get exposure because this plan's so good. I mean, that's not realistic.
well, and that exposure then brings it back into our schools, where we're having a hard enough time with just our student bodies. Now we're assuming potentially some risks from other districts. It opens the pool of people up even more.
But Tom, currently, we've allowed our fall sports, some of them to happen, like bowling started back in December. We've allowed our off-season workouts, and Frank, if I'm wrong, let me know, but back in, I believe, October, we started those off-season workouts with upwards of 50, 60, 70 students. And they were social distance, they were wearing masks, the temperatures were taken, all the precautions were put in place. And that's 50, 60, 70 student athletes. Right now, we're looking at basketball, which probably has a roster of 12 boys or 12 girls on a squad. They're in a gymnasium that has no spectators. They're going to be social distance when they're sitting on the bench. They have to wear a mask when they participate. So I believe the balls are going to be switched out at periodically. So all the precautions are there. No greater than bowling, when your bowling ball goes through a machine and comes back up and touches everybody else's ball, and you got to pick it up. So there's the exposure there in every one of these sports. High risk, I could see in football, there is a lot of body contact, but they're not considering soccer a high risk, it's a moderate risk. And there's a lot of contact. My boys all played soccer, and they're bouncing off of each other. There's a lot of contact there. So I don't see that being the critical downfall to allow these student athletes to participate. I think we're taking every precaution, even in a daily life of a student, getting on a bus with other students, getting off the bus, going into a school, touching everything that's available in the school setting, desks, chairs, handrails, up the stairs. we sanitize those as best we can, but the exposure, I believe, is greater in that school setting than in a sports venue. And that's just me speaking. Anyone else have any
I
questions?
just have a quick question, Tom, and maybe Frank, on the transportation. Do we feel that we can, I know we have been transporting children, since September when we went the hybrid method. Just want to make sure that we're comfortable as a district from that perspective, we can transport these teams in that same manner, taking the same precautions that we have.
Yes, well, between myself and transportation, Kathy over there, we worked it out to where we would have no buses or no need for a bus until 3:45. So our start times we pushed back as well in all the other districts. So the max on a bus is 20. So we would transport 20 people at a time. And if we happen to go somewhere, say with a JV and a varsity team, we'd be having 2 buses. But by not leaving at 3:45, there should be no conflicts with anything that goes on during the normal school day of transporting kids. So
Okay.
that's all pretty much taken care of.
Right.
So in some cases, we would need more than one bus, say for a football
Yes.
team.
We
Okay.
would.
Wow.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions or comments?
I know. I'm sorry.
Sue?
Alan Barone, I could not say what you just said any better. I strongly feel that we are taking the utmost precautions that we possibly can. I think our district needs it. I think the students need it. I think their own mental health needs it. I am strongly in favor of getting us rolling again. And I do know, I have confidence in Frank and Tom that they're going to take the utmost precautions to keep our students safe.
Right. There's no guarantees, but certainly,
Right.
like we said, we've been doing the preseason. It's been going very well. And remember, I know that, we think of the cohorts, but really the cohort's really only a pure cohort at the elementary level. So that's where they don't switch classes. At the middle school and high school, the kids switch classes. So even though it's the same, 100 kids, they're mixing almost every period because depending on what course they're in. So I do understand, yes, we're mixing, we've been mixing cohorts in the preseason, and this will mix cohorts also with the practices.
Tom Bongiovi, I have a question. When you say the medical director has to approve the plan, is this the Ulster County medical director?
No, just our school medical director.
Oh,
Dr.
okay.
Saha's office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Hey,
Bill, do you have anything?
yeah, Tom, I just want to make sure that, again, we're prepared for these other groups that don't have the benefit of NISFA advocating for them and pushing that decision downhill
Sure.
onto us. I got my own thoughts about that group and how they have not really necessarily been a good friend of our district years ago when Deborah was sitting in your chair. And Frank went to bat for a lot of things in that regard, and so did Deborah regarding the swim team and a couple other issues. And again, they weren't necessarily a good friend of the Highland School District in particular, and that's obviously who we are a part of. So, again, I see where we're going with this. It doesn't look like we're going to be able to turn it around, be able to weigh in on it, and so be it. But I think we better have some responses for these other groups that are probably going to want the same thing within our district.
I will,
Tom, I understand what you're saying. I don't think we can relate those two topics, though. This is a very distinct and separate topic. I think, the other thing that I think of just as I'm listening to you talk, and certainly there are a lot of other groups out there, that want to get back, kind of taking those steps back as well. But when you look at the world in general, theater has not gotten back anywhere. Whereas some sporting teams, sports have on a larger level. Obviously, resources in a professional sport is a lot more than at a school district level. But I think it goes along with kind of you know, where we are in the world really in general, just trying to move certain things forward. So
I will tell you,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, Mike, go ahead.
There's larger advocacy groups there.
I was just going to share that, you know, Marlboro is moving ahead with some virtual instrumental concerts. There
We
are, you know,
we have
if
our
there's a
virtual class.
desire, people can get together and potentially come up with a good plan that might work. It can be reviewed by our school medical person. That's why these plans have to go, and they usually look for those gaps and try to fill them. So
I agree that there are creative ways of addressing those, and I think our district has done a good job of exploring a lot of those.
yeah,
As far as professional sports go, I think we have to remember they're tested every day. They're in isolated groups. They actually isolate the teams, and they monitor them 24/7. So it gives a false sense of safety. I'm ultimately, you know, I understand there's a big desire to get back to this, and I'll respect that. With the caveat that Mr. Bongiovi put in the beginning, the Ulster County Board of Health has to waive that, not being held responsible, because to me that's just absurd. The one institution we go to for the standard of health and safety is telling us they don't want to be held responsible if what they're saying go ahead and do it, go play with glass in the streets, but don't hold us responsible. I don't respect that at all.
Again, Tom, I'm not
well,
anti-sports.
my understanding is if they don't retract it, I'm sorry, Tom, if they don't retract it, nobody's playing anywhere.
Correct.
Not the high risk, right?
All right, but again, in no way, shape, or form am I anti-sports in the school. I played all through high school myself, and to me, it's just being fair and being equitable to all of our students, and that's my advocacy at that point. And it's not anti-athletics.
No. I appreciate it, Tom. It's unfortunate that not everything is going to open up at the same time. Things have to be phased in.
Tom, correct me if I'm wrong. We do have a virtual play that we're doing, right?
Yes,
That I
yep.
we
Mrs.
talked
Bradley
about.
at the high school is going to be doing a virtual play. Yes, and we did have some virtual
Yeah.
concerts that went out. So
Tom, if there's somebody who you know who's really upset, have them call the superintendent and let them meet and talk it out. You never know
Mike,
what
I'm
happens.
I'm
People
just
solve problems.
I'm just raising the points and kind of advocating for them at this moment in time, or raising that our awareness that this might be coming down the pipe at us. That's all.
Yeah,
That's all
it
it is.
might be,
Not-
yes.
Yeah, no, and I think they're very legit, very valid points. I think, you know, in every part of everybody's life nowadays, we've had those discussions, right? And I think they're going to continue. And I think, you know, like Mike said, you know, if there's people who really are concerned, have them call the superintendent. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out, you know, what the best method is.
Or designee.
Right. Or designee. Sorry, Tom.
that's fine.
And I just think too, I want to jump, I'm trying to jump in, but just, I understand your point too as well, Tom, but just thinking about too, even if we return to sports, it's not gonna look the same as what it did last year. So even as we start resuming these activities, it's not gonna go back to where it is. So there's still gonna be different, you know, it's not gonna be the same exact experience. And I think just that we are offering virtual clubs, you know, I think that's important that we're offering these things, even if it does look a little different for our families. So it's just, I don't think sports starting is, if we went back to where we were, that's a different conversation, but we are, you know, it will happen with changes. And for me, I would like to just kind of, we can maybe have another conversation as we move into each season about what's happening. That would make, you know, myself and maybe others feel more comfortable about what precautions we're going to do specifically for each sport would be helpful.
Virtual is still a poor substitute for the real thing, for the real activity for our students.
It's better than nothing, though. You know, they haven't had anything since March, so it's better than nothing. I can tell you that firsthand from where I'm sitting at right now. You know, so
Okay. I respect that.
It's builds connection in school. So I'd rather have virtual than nothing at all.
Tom Bongiovi, when are you expecting to hear about the elimination of the hold harmless for Ulster County?
Yeah, I know that we're, as a superintendent's group, we are on hard on the Department of Health and Pat Ryan, but I don't know. I would say at least a week or more.
All right,
Their
so this
attorney
could
is-
potentially be moot.
It could be moot. I would say it's strong possibility that basketball might be moot even if we approve it, just because
Wow,
it'll take too long to get
Yeah.
done.
wow.
But hopefully, if the board so chooses to approve the high-risk sports, that hopefully it would be done and taken care of by March 1st.
Right, so the only sports of that list that are potentially moving forward as of February 1st would be the basketball program and the competitive cheer. The other three are fall sport, which takes place March 1st. So
Yeah.
like Tom B just said, that there is the possibility that, the basketball programs will not move forward because they're a very short season. If they start on February 1st, they gotta have 6 days of practice and then some competition. They gotta end by February 28th. So it's a very short season for them. And that might not even happen. So
Right.
we're hoping that the county would respond. If they don't respond within the week, at least by the March 1st date. And we grouped this together so we can make that approval now. So coaches, parents, everyone has an idea of how we're moving forward. And that can all change with, the environment and what might happen in the next several weeks, and we don't know that. So does anyone else have any comments? Because I think we vetted pretty well now. I'd like to move it forward to a vote unless someone has some more comments and concerns or questions. We're all good to move it forward?
Just what, are there any provisions in place for actual testing? The school can't mandate testing at all, right? That's a legal issue.
No, we could require testing. We could make testing part of it. We don't have the tests, so we'd have to get tests. We're not allowed to, we have the tests through the MOU we did, but that is for the 20%. We've already asked that we cannot use those tests to test the athletes because that goes against the MOU. So we would have to get tests.
Could I ask, rather than draw this out right now, but can I ask that we revisit that issue? Should this become active, that we revisit the issue of testing?
Absolutely.
Our next meeting is February 9th,
Yes.
almost a little over a week. All right, anyone else? All right, we have a motion on the floor by Mike B, seconded by Sue. I'll read the resolution again, and then I'll just ask for a raise of hand so we can all see who's in favor and who's not. And if someone wants to abstain, you have that right. Be resolved, the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, formally approves participation in the following high-risk sports for the 2020-2021 school year, contingent upon the district's ability to comply with all stipulations set out by the Ulster County Department of Health. Boys and girls varsity basketball, boys and girls JV basketball, competitive cheer, varsity, modified A football, varsity JV and modified volleyball, and boys varsity and modified lacrosse. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? 5 in favor, 1 opposed, 1 abstention. Okay. Hopefully, this is a start to bringing back schools to somewhat of a normalcy. And, like Tom Miller had said, advocate for some of the other programs and, here we are, February 1st, more than half the school year is behind us, but let's think positive and move forward. And hopefully next September, we can look back at all this and said, we went through a change that we've never imagined would happen to us or our world, and we got beyond it. So I want to thank everyone for being able to come on board for this special meeting. I think a lot of parents and student athletes will be somewhat pleased, and I hope this makes us move in the right direction. So thank you. I don't believe we have any comments, any public comment, Lisa, that came on? No? Okay. So motion to adjourn. Motion made by Heather, second by Camille. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So carried. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good weekend, everyone. Stay warm.
Stay warm.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.